Live. Hello,
Woo.
everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to our nonfiction book club for February. We're talking about this book that I will hold up when I finally get it in my hands. We're talking about How Far the Light Reaches, A Life in 10 Sea Creatures by Sabrina Imbler. I guess I should do the introduction thing. I'm Deboki. You're on my channel. Hi. Welcome to anyone who's new to Nonfiction Book Club. We'll start with our usual clusterfuck of an introduction. I'm Deboki. I write about science for YouTube videos and podcasts, and I talk about science and stuff. And so, yeah, that's what I do.
I'm Nicole Sweeney. I produce YouTube videos. And that's
Hi, Colby. Colby,
Colby,
our unofficial third member, who's always here.
Shout out to Colby.
Hello. So this week we're talking about How Far the Light Reaches, and I'm really excited. I've been really interested in this book. It's a memoir-ish, also science nonfiction-ish. Basically, each chapter is an essay where Imbler, they take on a specific like marine animal of some sort, and then also some specific aspect of their life, maybe something related to their childhood, related to their identity as a mixed race person, queerness, like a lot of different topics, like really kind of using that to compare and contrast with some aspect of the animal's life. So really using nature as a metaphor, kind of like the way that people have been loving to write about nature for a long time, drawing a lot of personal kind of connections to the strange creatures that exist in the ocean. Yeah. So that's the book. And like I said, I was very excited for this book. Imbler wrote this great article for The Defector that is, okay, I should look up the title. I totally meant to have this because it is one of the best things on the internet. One of the
whole
the things that the internet is good for.
Wow.
Yeah. The title is An Oral History of the Time 6 Doctors Swallowed Lego Heads to See How Long They'd Take to Poo. And it is my favorite article. I'm putting it in the chat because I think it's like one of the best uses of the oral history form and for scientific purposes. So
headline alone, I'm like, yeah, that does feel like at the very least a contender for the best thing on the whole internet, like guaranteed entry. So
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I've liked their writing. I was excited for this book. And I was also excited for it because we did virology for the last time we were on this channel, which was sort of a similar vibe in a lot of ways. A lot of personal essays, a lot of essays examining queerness, but also essays examining how we think about viruses and kind of drawing a lot of connections between how we think about science and how we think about parts of our personal life. So we had mixed reactions to virology. And so I was very intrigued by how we were going to feel about this book. So I'm excited to find out and see how I feel. I'm still deciding how I feel.
Oh, interesting.
No, I actually don't. Okay, so I will say overall I'm very positive, but the book also made me think about some things. So I'm like very curious about your feelings.
I am so excited to get into it. I didn't even think about the connection to virology until you pointed it out, but now that you said it, that is it's like very obvious that they're doing very similar things. My immediate reaction to hearing you say that though was this book is doing very similar things more effectively. It's funny though, because I think like there are ways in which I think virology was more elegant with the metaphors. This book is like blunt force. Like it is very, it's like, it's not, the metaphors are all extremely on the nose and like on purpose. Like, that is what they are doing here. And it's interesting that I feel like that works better. Like it works better, like to just, to be really, I don't know, to be so on the nose about it. Sorry, now I'm like going down this rabbit hole of the virology comparison. I really enjoyed this on the whole. I'm really curious about like the things though that this, I don't know, all the things that it made you think about. because my feelings are generally extremely positive. So
It was funny to me too that you're saying that the metaphors are really blunt, because I never do this, but for some reason for today, just like before we hopped onto this live stream, I looked up the Goodreads reviews for this book because I was kind of curious, because a lot, like at first I was sort of like, I kind of loved everything. There's like one or two points where I'm like not sure, like, or not sure about, but things that I want to talk about. But like overall, I'm just curious about how other people think about this book. And one of the things, like most people on Goodreads love this book. The people who don't like it, one of the things that they said is they felt like the metaphors needed like a little bit more tightening, or they didn't feel like they connected to the personal side as much. And I was kind of like, because like if anything, if I were going to criticize the metaphor, I would be far more likely to criticize them for being heavy-handed.
Yeah,
I'm not going to, because I actually thought it worked.
I think it worked, but I thought that they were really heavy-handed. Like, in this way that like it's the kind of thing where it's not quite the same, but it's like adjacent to I think that if you struggle with incredibly flowery writing in fiction, with like very like this feels like, I feel like the audience for this and the audience for people who love like a flowery fantasy is also like a lot of overlap. Like it's not this, there's a distinction. These two things are not the same, but the metaphors are very heavy-handed. I'm like shocked that anybody's complaint would be, I didn't see how what?
And like so for example, one example is like maybe like the hybrids chapter, where they're talking about like hybrid, like some animals I think that are hybrids, and then talking about that in the context of like mixed race identity, the butterfly fish, and which I think is like, I think that's like the original kind of like starting point for that essay, and kind of talking about hybrid identity for an animal, and then talking about hybrid identity as a mixed race person. Another one where I thought especially like the metaphor worked really well.
I loved that one so much too, because of the way that they talk about like the questions of like, so how we talk about like animals as hybrids, and then the how would I write about this in the way that I would want somebody to write about me? Like, I just, again, I don't know how you miss it.
I'm trying to remember if this is the one that I wrote this for. Yeah, this is the one where I wrote, this is the most self-conscious of the essays. Like there's a whole paragraph where they're writing about sort of like how the writing of the essay feels. And they write, I worry this essay will resemble one of Helga's irritations, in which I fixate on something so vain and minor, it hardly warrants a whole essay. And that's a reference to a character in a book that they're kind of like using to talk about like, in this case, racial anxiety and like irritations and stuff like that. And so it was like, it's it was a sort of self-consciousness that's not present in like in a lot of the other essays, despite the fact that they are all deeply personal essays. And I found that really, really fascinating. Because I mean, I'm not mixed race, so I can't understand it from that angle, but from the angle of like writing about like being a brown person, at least for me in the US, there is sort of like sometimes a sense of like, when you talk about displacement, how do you want to talk about it, and feeling really self-conscious about it. So I don't know if like, I don't want to say that's exactly what they're talking about in that context, but it's just something that it made me think about a lot in terms of just like how I think about writing about my own identity, I guess, and like the self-consciousness of that.
I am always a sucker for like meta narratives, in particularly something that is part memoir. Like like it's a fucking weird exercise. Like you are sitting down and you're like dredging up all of this personal stuff and trying to do it, but also like share the academic, like the science portions of this. Everything about this is like a weird and complicated exercise. And so I don't know. I love the moments of like the like fourth wall break type moments of like, and I'm thinking about how I'm telling you this, like I am now talking about talking to you. I love that stuff. I think that's really interesting, and I think that it is instructive about, I don't know, like how the author is approaching things.
And I think that part ended up standing out to me because this is my one criticism, I guess. It's not criticism. It's just like the one thing that I sort of like kind of wished maybe for something different is one of the things that I was like kind of struck by after reading a few of these chapters is like they start to feel a little samey to me after a while, because the structure and the whole setup becomes very similar across each essay. Like if it starts to feel like there are a very familiar set of beats to each one, where it's like creature, personal, creature, personal,
Yeah,
creature,
yeah.
personal, and then like ending with like some great sentences that kind of leave things like on this certain note.
Uh-huh.
And it works. Like each individual essay on its own stands out really, really strongly to me. But what was sort of tough for me is that as a collection, I kind of was like hoping for something that would bring like a different rhythm to it, so that it would just read a little bit differently across the whole book.
That's fair. I think for me, I don't have that problem with it, in part because it's so short. Like I think that
Yeah.
if the collection had a couple more essays in it that were still it, like I think, I don't know. I that is that's a fair critique. I For me it felt like it worked because
Yeah.
they stopped it where they did, you know.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's super fair, because I think that is like a part of it too. And I think they also chose the right essay to start with.
Uh-huh.
The first essay, which is
And the end
about
too. I think the
goldfish.
first and last, I think,
Yeah.
are strong. Like that's the organizationally was strong, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway,
like the
the
first one is
goldfish.
about
Sorry. Yeah.
goldfish. So it like is like super familiar, super like
Yes.
we've all dealt with the goldfish, but like kind of
Yes.
like introduces you to how this whole, I don't know, this whole structure is going to work. So I really like that.
Uh huh. It also has probably the strongest like tie between like the fish facts and the, because like the personal story
Yeah.
is very literally about like goldfish, you know. Like there's
Yeah. Yeah.
here is a story about me and goldfish, and also I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you some facts about goldfish.
Yep.
And my facts about goldfish are things that I wish that I knew at the time, because it would have made my story about goldfish more effective. Like I would have been more effective at stopping people from buying goldfish.
Yeah. The Petco activism.
I love it so much. What a
Yeah.
delight. What a delight.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite essay or two?
The goldfish one is really strong. I really love the last essay. In part because I actually do think the last essay is the one that feels like it's playing with the structure the most. Like it is,
Right. Yeah, you're
there's
right.
something a little bit different going on there structurally. Just because they have the like other contributors. And it's that that last chapter is definitely the most chaotic. Like there's a lot to track there. But I don't know. I appreciated the idea of like the meta, like the sea creature metaphor, as also being one about like thinking of other ways of like existing, like of like I don't know, like reframing our own existence in a way that I mean, I guess all of them are kind of doing that, but in like less this one felt like it was doing that the most, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it felt like the most imaginative, like the most
Yeah.
I think like a lot of the other ones are more about, I hope this makes sense, like looking back, and this felt more about like
Yes.
imagining a different kind of future, even if it's still like it is still rooted in the past. Like it's
Yes.
like it is rooted in people's past, but it felt very different in that way.
Yes, yes, yeah. It felt, yes. Like this was, it felt like the most like imaginative forward looking of the essays, which also made it like a really great way to end the whole collection. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think like it's interesting too, because that first essay is so focused on just the author, and like the last one is so like branched out into a lot of other different people. And so like there's kind of like one more thing, like talking about like how the structure of the book overall like kind of helps with the flow of the essays. Like that's something that made me think about a lot.
Yeah.
this is like a lot about, there's a lot of like community in this book, which is also, I think, a lot of like virology. Like, I feel like, I mean, I
Yes.
think any book that we've read that touches on queerness is also inherently about like talks
Yes.
about
Community
community.
is yes. Well, I mean, because it is like inherently social. Like part of the
Yeah.
point, like that is, it's a question of how you are relating to and engaging with other people. So
Yeah.
there is no way to like wholly extricate the social from your understanding of it. And I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I don't want to speak for all people, but I do think that like most people's experiences, like there's an element of how other people were instrumental in like arriving at a place yourself, and then also in sort of like your ongoing understanding of
Mhm.
that sense of like, it is understanding yourself as a social being, like
Mhm.
that is like fundamental to what queerness is.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you, yeah, it's like virtually impossible to talk about it without talking about community in
Yeah.
some sense or another, but
Yeah. Yeah. Which makes the sea creatures a like interesting metaphor, because I feel like, I mean, it works in the book, but I like think of like sea creatures as not necessarily as like super, I mean, like, okay, there's like communities of fish and stuff, but especially like we're getting like deep in the ocean with a lot of these, and so you're like,
yeah.
oh, a lot of these creatures are not necessarily super, but like, I mean, one of the essays that I feel like is a lot about that is like the We Swarm essay, which is like all about what was the animal? It was one that I hadn't heard of before. Salps.
Yeah.
Salps. And that was cool. Oh yeah, this had one of my favorite images, which is like about how these these salps basically live a big chunk of their lives, not their entire lives, as these like chains of clones. And there's this description of them bending and wavering like a liquefied spine that like I feel like again and again throughout this book, I was just like, the images are so good.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I don't remember what my original point was. Just that I like as
well,
right,
the like, yeah, not associating sea creatures with that idea. And like, it's interesting too, though, because like that's something that like they talk about in the book. It like the way in which we associate like a number of the creatures that are featured in the book with like, you know, like, oh, they live in the dark, where it's dark and cold and formidable and inhospitable, and like, but like that is only true because it is contrary to, like, it's inhospitable to us, but like
yeah.
that's the whole point. Like the fact that it is inhospitable to us does not actually mean that it is inhospitable, full stop. There's a I don't remember which chapter it's in, but
I
like
think it was the crab.
they
Young
go on
crab?
about like at length about this idea that
Yeah.
like the dark, yeah, because there's a crab, because it's like, what if he doesn't have the crab that doesn't have eyes, like what use does this crab have for the sun, essentially? And so like, you know, we fixate on this idea of darkness, but that is a question of like essentially of like failed imagination, that like everything else's needs must mirror our own.
Yeah.
I don't know. The big philosophical questions of the book. I really love this. Like, I just there's it's doing so much with so little space, and that's, I
It's
don't know,
very
man.
efficient.
It's
Yeah.
efficient. Yes.
Yeah. I forgot what I was. Oh, I was going to talk about my two favorite essays, which it was interesting that they were two of my favorite ones. It was the My Mother and the Starving Octopus, which is the second essay, and then later Beware the Sand Striker. So My Mother and the Starving Octopus is about both like motherhood and also eating disorders. So it's like both an examination of like, I think, moms who kind of give a lot for their children, in this case an octopus that basically gives up eating for its children, but then also about imblers, like relationship to their own body, and like so there's a lot of kind of stuff about body issues in that chapter. And then Beware the Sand Striker is basically all about sexual violence, and particularly I don't know like what the right way to describe it, but in Imbler's case, like talking about experiences having sex while being very intoxicated and their relationship to that, like when they were younger and kind of going through that and how they think about it now. And it was like really interesting to me that these were the two essays that like have stuck with me the most, because I feel like they're both about topics that I've read plenty of essays and personal essays about at this by this point. Like I feel like eating and sexual violence essays, like I've read plenty of. The Sand Striker essay references Chanel Miller, which has like been kind of like a big touchstone for just like any kind of writing now to me about sexual violence. So yeah, it was kind of striking to me that they were both. I think that the starving octopus one is just because that central image of the octopus is like so vivid in that one. Like it is just so vivid. And then with the Sand Striker one, I think it's because I really appreciated the way that it like, that's another one that maybe is on the verge of self-conscious, where it's like a lot about the fact that they themselves are like figuring out how they feel about this. And they're very upfront about that, and like about very upfront about what they're trying to do and not trying to do in that essay, and how they want the other people involved in those situations to like think about it or not think about it. Like there's just like a lot of grappling with the writing of that essay itself in that one.
I don't have a ton I think that those two have also like the octopus one has the strongest metaphor, I think, or like the connection there, particularly because you're like it's like, I don't know, the fact that it's specifically a like mother octopus, like just like I don't know, there are multiple layers to why that metaphor, like tying the octopus to these stories of her mother track so well. The Sand Striker chapter I think is also really there's a lot of imagery that sticks. I think that one actually is probably, the metaphor is maybe the weakest in that case.
I think you're right,
because they're spending the most time on like I don't know, like I don't really remember that much about the Sand Striker, but I do remember that chapter very well because of the personal I don't know, just like grappling with how you come to terms with your own experiences, and like what is the version of it, like what is the version of it that you are telling other people, and what is the version of it that you have to like, I don't know, tell yourself to live with it.
That felt the most like that animal was chosen more to write about the fact that it had been called the bobbit worm. And not necessarily because it directly, like you said, like the metaphor is actually one of the weaker ones. And it's one of the ones where like every time it came up, I was like, okay, I see the point of this, but like it doesn't like it doesn't quite connect in that way. Compared to the other chapters. Which like I feel like gets to like another question I have that we're not going to be able to answer, but one of the things I was really curious about is like what came first for each of these essays, like the personal story or the animal. Like I'm sure it's both. I'm sure the answer is both, but I would love to know. Like I think if I were going to ask Imbler a question, I would like want to know for each essay.
Like process wise, how did you go, like to what? How were you starting with? I mean, it seems like, it definitely feels like it's both, especially because so many of the essays have these they're like personal stories about like jobs that they had, or like classes that they took, or something that like put them in direct contact with the like the creature thing, and this, so like it's, I don't know, it feels like
that's true, like the salp. Salp.
I feel like I don't know. I don't know shit about sea creatures. So like, you know, how would I go about doing this? Would the creature first or the story first? But I feel like because this is a thing that they know so much about, and they have had so much contact with, it seems like it's like metaphors that you would be making kind of in the back of your mind anyway, like as you're doing things.
Yeah, that's funny because I feel like for me, inevitably thinking about this book makes me think about writing for Journey to the Microcosmos, because it is like a lot of very similar exercises of like, here is organism. What does organism make you feel? How does what does it make you think of?
Now let's have big existential thoughts about existence based on this organism. Go.
Yeah. And then, but like, I've only ever done, well, partly because
if you're into this, if you read this book and enjoyed it, you should
have a YouTube channel for you. Journey to the Microcosmos.
Beautiful.
You should all watch it.
You should all watch it.
But like obviously for Microcosmos, we don't often get super personal because I'm not the one narrating it. It would be weird for Hank to do a memoir about. I like the idea of Hank narrating my memoirs.
I do actually. That's what. No, hold on. I think you're onto something, Deboki.
Hank's new project, Deboki's life. But yeah, I mean, okay, so I guess so I'm gonna get like self-conscious now about my writing, but like an episode we've talked about in meetings before that like I'm pretty proud of is an episode we did about sea anemones, which I'm
proud of you for saying sea anemone.
I said it correctly. I'm so you guys don't understand. I still think it's sea anemone, but it is actually sea anemone. So I wrote that one and I also narrated it. And so because I was narrating it, or I think I told Matt that I wanted to narrate it because I was like, I have an idea for this episode, but I have to be the one that narrates it because it will not, that's one that like absolutely Hank cannot narrate on my behalf. It would be bad. And basically I'm talking in my case about like growing up Indian American and like, just like, the usual kind of disconnect crisis that a lot of us go through in terms of figuring out like where we're from, and kind of relating it to this question that is central to a lot of the sea anemone about like, where is it from? And it's an interesting mystery and it's kind of cool. And as I was like doing research about it, I was like, oh, I feel like I relate to this. So yeah, that's what reading this book made me think of. And like, especially when at the times that the essays start to get a little bit more self-conscious, also I like really relate to that, because I think one of the other things that this book made me think about, and I think a lot of good science books make me think about this, is sort of this long-standing tension that comes up in science writing between anthropomorphizing nature and wanting to also acknowledge nature as like separate from like everything that we project off onto it. And I think this book is like pretty, like if I were going to create a scale of like 1 to 10, where 10 is like full on projecting, like we're treating these animals as human, I think maybe this would be like, to me, maybe a 7-ish, 6 or 7-ish, where I think it's like pretty, I mean, doing the metaphors that it's doing, like it's hard not, like it is all about projecting onto nature, right? Or like taking what we see and projecting like our own human lives onto it. And I think it does it very assertively. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. Just like that was the thing that this book made me think about
as a science writer, that's a thing that you're constantly thinking about and like being careful of. It makes sense that it's gonna jump out to you when you're like, well, that thing, you're making assumptions about the way that thing feels that are like, you can't actually
and I think they're actually like very cautious about how they do it, which I think like is the sign of it being done well. But I wonder that's something that makes me wonder about like how a lot of people would react to it, because I know how some people react to the way we do it on Microcosmos, which is like some people maybe don't like it. I'm fine with it because I think we've all agreed collectively on why we talk about the microbes the way we do on the show. So for me, it's fine. But I also understand for some people why they don't like it. But yeah, it's just something that I always find really fascinating in science writing, because at some point you have to accept that we're going to project onto the things. Like that is sort of, that's a very human thing to do. It's part of how we look at nature, but obviously there's a limit. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm really rambling.
No, I mean, it's there is something like it's interesting because there is something incredibly human about that. I saw a tweet the other day that was basically like how funny it is that humans are so social that like when we see a dog, we immediately start talking to it. Like the impulse to like you meet somebody's dog, you're like, oh hey buddy. And you're like fully like are saying sentences at the dog. That is like
Yeah.
but and like it's funny because it's like yes that's you're right yeah what am I gonna not say hi to the dog?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say hi to the dog. I'm not an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that James has conversations with his microbes like under the microscope. So
for
like,
sure.
it goes even beyond like you can't even be like, oh, the dog has a mouth. Some like there are creatures that do not have mouths and we're still like talking to them, right?
Listen,
like
when you see a little guy, you gotta acknowledge it and respect it as a little guy.
Yeah.
That's a little guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my buddy in there.
That's my friend.
Yeah.
I know his lifespan is 4 hours, but for the next 4 hours, that's my friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I wrote that episode after I had worked, like it was like I had been working on a little mini podcast series for Scientific American where I was like talking about a bunch of different science books. So I was like reading a whole bunch of them like in a short span of time. And so I just like I don't know, taken in a lot of people's like nature and science writing and came out of it being like, I too shall draw metaphor with my life, and it felt like very good. I was like, this is great. Maybe we should all be doing this more. Maybe we should all write book reports about science that are also about the ways that they make us think about our own life. Like I actually think I just came up with this. I was like, maybe this is actually a good thing for society. Like we just let people pick a science thing, pick a metaphor, and use that to examine their own I don't know, bullshit,
lives,
their own things.
Yeah.
But yeah. And, yeah.
I feel like I don't have. I loved this, and that is like why I don't have as much to say about it.
Yeah, this is again like I mean a lot about biology where we had a lot to say about it.
Yeah,
because it was like so all over the place in terms of what worked and what didn't work. Yeah. If people want to tell us their favorite.
Yes. Well, if you read this book, what was your favorite essay in the book? Any like fun facts that you learned that will stick with you now? This is not a fun fact. This is actually a really depressing fact. But when they were talking about the all the whales that we've killed, and how first of all, like the sheer number of whales over, I was like, what the fuck? And then also the one whale provides as much food as 1,000 years worth of marine snow. So like, it's not just that we killed all those whales; it's that we're killing all these things that like like the layers. I was like, well, this is horrifying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of like I don't know why that was so surprising to me. Like I had never thought about the fact that like killing the whale is not just about killing the whale. It's about the fact that the whale bodies are also very important to the ecosystem.
It's not just that we killed the whale, it's that we extracted the whale. We killed the whale and removed it. And so like in addition to the whale no longer being alive, and in addition to so many very large animals no longer being alive, these many large animals are no longer part of the ecosystem in the way that they are meant to be. And that it's pretty fucked up. It's pretty upsetting information. I gotta say.
Is that the one also? Because one of the facts that I was like, I had never thought about this, but it's like the difference between necropsy and autopsy.
Oh, autopsy. Yeah.
That was fascinating. So basically, autopsies are in humans, and necropsies are for non-humans, and there's like even stuff in the language where it's like, okay, so necropsy breaks down to death plus seeing, autopsy to self plus seeing. And oh, this is like one of the lines I really liked. But I understand now that an autopsy can be an uncanny act of predict. Oh, sorry. Okay, wait. It reminded me of all the ways we shoehorn distinctions between ourselves and other animals, often harming both of us. But I understand now that an autopsy can be an uncanny act of prediction for the dissector, one of many ways to go, a possible future. When biologists necropsy a whale, I assume they are not reminded of our individual threat of cancer, or the universal threat of a car crash. They do not subconsciously compare their arms to a whale's fin, their teeth to bristly plating of baleen. I was like, I really like that.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting, like, I don't know, a really interesting distinction to draw. Because especially because it does start from a place that is really familiar of like, we always draw these distinction between us and animals, and like that. Yeah, that's bad for our knowledge in a lot of ways.
Yes, like there's like knowledge, empathy. There's like a lot of reasons why that's like weird, and maybe we shouldn't be doing that. But also, maybe sometimes we should.
Yeah,
but actually, yes.
Yeah, which is interesting given the conversation we were just having about like the anthropomorphizing and the projecting onto animals, because like the whole point is like, yeah, sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't.
Sometimes it isn't, you know. That's it's not like, it is not actually as clean as like yes, no, do this, don't do this. It's like it is going to be situational and contextual. So
yeah. Oh, sorry. The morphing like a cuttlefish was also really interesting, because I think that was I love it when science writers like take on just like how do science, like I love when science writing becomes almost like a science cultural critique, because I feel like we should be doing that. That's a good way. That's like something that we all need to be doing. And in the cuttlefish one, there's a lot of that in terms of like, how are we studying cuttlefish? Why are we so obsessed with them like as a defensive organism? Like, why are we focusing so much on the way there's this line: reading a creature through its camouflage seems a misguided attempt to understand its true nature, its whole self. It'd be like studying a zebra while it flees from a lion, or a mouse as it cowers in a hollow log. I think this is we can turn the rest of this just into like us giving our favorite lines. I'm like happy to just be like,
as I was going through the tabs, I was like, most of these are not, this is just like, this is a really good turn of phrase. It's like a lot of what my tabs are. But yes, that one is also really interesting in a just like meta, like how we think about like science, how we think about like our understanding of other creatures, and that like that there is so much of this framing of like they have developed this adaptation to deal with this predator, but like that's like there is a flattening in our understanding that is happening there in treating that as like the most interesting and distinctive feature of a creature's existence is the adaptations they have developed to evade their predators. Like but it's like, it's something that I would not ever have thought of. Like I just there's that is much of a part of my understanding of other species on Earth, and because that's like the way that we talk about them, and so it's a very lovely little turn of phrase, but also just a really interesting idea to consider.
The other thing I was going to say, like talking about the whale one again, which Ernest Alex Reeds was talking about. I think I'm assuming it's also the sperm whale one. I can't remember if there was another whale. I think it was just that one. One of the things that was interesting to me about that one is a lot of the metaphor or like the parallels are like kind of like big concept-y kind of ones. That one is like a lot smaller, not big concept-y, but they're like big life events, or like big, like there's a lot more than just the like like if we're examining like eating disorders or sexual violence or like grandmother like immigrating, like all of that stuff, there's like something big going on. And that one almost felt like a lot smaller because it's more about this one specific breakup and like why that breakup happened in the myriad of different ways that you could explain it. There's like the really interesting kind of like necropsy report. Like maybe that's one where like the structure becomes a little bit more
because the introduction of the reports throughout I think was interesting and cool.
Because again, so that's for like where I have to like take back my critique, but also I want to say that I think that's part of where I like kind of wish it could lean more into that, because I mean, you can't do it that often before it becomes like each chapter starts to feel gimmicky. But I really like, so like in the How to Draw a Sperm Whale chapter, there's both like, you know, talking about dead whales and everything, but also like we said, there's the necropsy versus autopsy, and then Imbler is basically doing the necropsy report of this relationship and examining, like we said, like all the different possible explanations for it, kind of through different anecdotes and like moments from the relationship as well. And I thought that was very cool. I mean, I hate to say like your breakup was cool, but like
you talked about your breakup was cool.
And it was related to that metaphor in a way that was also really interesting, where it's like, and again, it's sort of like the goldfish one, where there is actually a personal connection too, because this class, the whale is actually like part of a class that I think they were both taking, like How to Draw a Whale or something was like the title of the class. So there's like, that's one of the, you know what, maybe that's my secret favorite essay. And I gotta take back like I feel like as I'm talking about it, I'm like, you know,
I really love this one actually. And another thing that I loved about this essay.
But you know what we should have done? We're gonna start over. We're gonna go chapter by chapter. We're gonna explain why each chapter is our favorite chapter.
The case for this one as the best one, and we go back and forth on it. This is another chapter that I had a tab in for like a good sort of turn of phrase. They're talking about the again in like the corpse of whales, like a blueprint. The corpse of a whale offers a blueprint of its internal self, the arrangement of its organs and vessels and hearts. Sometimes talking about like whale hunting. Sometimes before the hunt, whalers would get lucky and spy somewhere in the distance the entire body of the whale, its leathery form, seizing air like some supernatural bat. But gravity makes these moments when you can grasp the full nature of a thing fleeting. So like the idea of like them seeing, like they're seeing the whale out there, but they're hunting it. And so they saw this really cool, wonderful thing, and that was it. Anyway,
we needed someone else to join us on the whale essays.
Okay. We've really done it. We're doing a lot of really effective whale essay propaganda here. So we're good. I think our work here is done.
If you read one essay from this book,
I don't know, man. It's a short book. Just read the whole book. It's a good book.
Yeah. I like this take on it too, where like I like that it's a breakup is so personal, but almost universal. And the death of the whales is universal, and what humans did to whales, but also every death is small. And like there's like something about the smallness of each like breakup, each death, but also the universality. I think that's what I hope I'm interpreting that correctly. But yeah, hey. I always think...
also extremely universal that they followed this up with. I don't know if that makes sense. Deeply relatable. It does make sense, but anyway, continue. Sorry to focus.
No. I agree. I'm on board.
But the idea of it as both like small and extremely personal, but also like universal, commonplace, happens all the time, kind of.
Imbler has another book now that I think I'm gonna hunt down. I forget what it's called, but I feel like this like really sold me more on like, okay, I like the writing. Gotta read more of it.
Ready to go all in.
Yeah.
I'm a Sabrina Imbler stan now.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah, man. This is usually the part where, as we're winding down, we like give our final verdict on the book. But I think I've said that I like this book approximately 15 times over the
Yeah.
course of the last 45 minutes. So,
Yeah.
um, there's not really a
Yeah, I
conclusion
think
to
if we
draw
had
there.
a nonfiction book club hall of fame or like favorite books, this would be one of mine, I
Yeah.
think.
Yes, I agree.
Like the only thing that I don't like about it is that I don't know how to talk about it. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how to talk about it without just being like, I think it's good. And also it makes me feel inadequate as a science writer. Like
The thing that I dislike most about it is that it makes me feel shitty about myself.
yeah. Yeah.
So that was really rude of Sabrina, and
Yeah. Excuse you. My ego is bruised.
they really should have thought more about my own ego and pride
Yeah.
before they did this.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. It's quite rude.
I don't know. This book was so beautifully written and heartbreaking. And I just feel like there are so many little pieces of this that I'm gonna be thinking about for so long. And like I I feel like because of the nature of like the memoir and the like the sea creature stuff, it allowed space for these incredibly like poetic I mean, I believe their first book was a poetry collection, so that also makes sense.
Yeah.
That like that so much of the writing is so poetic. But I really appreciated something that we talked about a lot in the early days of this book club was this like distinction, this idea of like the kinds of books that you were going to pick and the kinds of books that I was going to pick. And
Mhm.
consistently, the things that have been the best are the ones that feel like they live somewhere in the in between, you know, somewhere
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
you have found a way to not just do like
Science thing or
yeah, or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, like
or
that
society
is
thing.
yes.
It's the intersection.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, okay, so that's interesting too. Because especially because when we've talked about society thing, it's like usually in the context of like a sociology book. So it's like something that examines like multiple people, examines, culture. It's like a mass. But this is like a book that does that, but like through the individual. Like it is very much like I think it's still about culture, but it's about culture like in that very individual identity kind of sense,
Yeah.
which is a thing that we haven't had as much of. Like even virology is a little bit more broad, I think. Especially some
Mhm.
of like the COVID essays, like those are like maybe that's like actually more like a mix of personal, but also still society. I might be making a distinction that's like not quite necessary, but I think this struck me as even more personal than virology did, which is part of why I think
Yes.
of it as a little bit different.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like looking at my I was realizing this is
What books
my
have we
back to
read?
you, but I'm literally looking at my stack of
Yeah.
nonfiction book club books.
Yeah.
They are all in the room with me. I'm looking at
Yeah.
them. I was trying to see if there were any other like good examples. We got a good, I mean, like it would take me a minute to go get our whole little stack.
We've been doing
So
this for like a little while now. I was like
yeah.
thinking about that. I was like, we've like kept this up.
Yes. Look at us. Wait, actually, hold on. I want now I'm gonna do it. Okay, wait, hold on. Hold on. I'm gonna mute myself so that I can hear you and not create an echo.
Oh, okay, okay. I feel like I gotta like say things while Nicole is doing all of that, but I don't. Oh, look at all the books. Okay, so there's Worn, there's End of Everything, there's Alchemy of Us, Consumed. I'm trying to guess what other ones are in there, but I can't see the one that's under Worn. And I think The Death and Life of Great American Cities might be the top one. because that is the one that I could only read on ebook because I was traveling and could not do that. I think maybe Personality Brokers is in there. The girl from the show. Oh, I Like to Watch. Yeah.
Hi, hello. Okay.
Yes.
All right, I did it. I got the stack. I got the stack together. There's three stacks. I think I grabbed everything. It's possible that I'm missing something, but so we have this giant
Yeah.
stack of books here. Like how do I position them? We got
Oh, yeah. Oh, Versailles, Battle of Versailles, and then Virology was on top of that. I was trying to, like, remember what all of these were. Yeah. Oh, The View from Somewhere. That was a great book. I completely forgot. That was so good.
another gem in our collection.
Yeah.
I just pulled my earring out. And then there's this stack.
Yeah.
Oh, the bottom is the one we just read, the one that I
Yeah.
can't see the spine for.
Got it.
How do I? There it is.
Oh, man. Oh, The Disordered Cosmos is an interesting, like, book to think about in the context of this one as well, because I think there's a lot of a similar vibe to it, and too, in terms of, like, drawing connections between personal, societal, and scientific, as well as, like, race and queerness as well in that book.
Yes, that one is also doing a lot of like this like personal and also scientific at the same time. Come here. Okay, I'll do this in two separate small stacks. Got this.
Oh man, because the Age of Surveillance Capitalism is the size of like 3 books.
Yep, that is several books in one little stack there. On Immunity also has a lot of, it's different. It's not like the essay sort of style that Disordered Cosmos and this book are, but it's essay. It's not like discrete essays in the same way.
Yeah, that's more like one big long essay.
One large essay. And then
oh man, yeah. That's like from the beginning.
This is some real throwback content here.
Wowee.
Yep. I think this is the stack. I'll pick those up later.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh yeah, and so Alex brings up Lonely City, which I was also thinking about when we were talking about like how like any of these books that are about queerness are inherently also about community, because like that whole book is about loneliness in like essentially about community in the opposite sense. But yeah, man.
We've read a lot of books is the big takeaway here. We've done a lot of reading, and I've made a mess of my office. So and myself. I'll put this earring back in later. It's fine.
So do you think so we like brought up a few examples of like the sciencey personal ones. Do you think you've noticed any trends in like things that you respond really strongly to, both good and bad? Anything else like that? Like that's what I'm like wondering now for myself.
Yeah,
because like I know like in general like oh yeah I like a good science and society essay, but now like that we've read more of them, I'm like okay, like if I were going to compare all of them and like rank it like on the most simplest level, like rank them or like think about what makes one work, what makes one not work, where would I go with that? Because like virology is the one that I feel like we had the most conflicted feelings about, but even still, like when I was thinking about like how I kind of wish that this book had, like one of the reasons why I was thinking about virology in comparison to this book is, you know, like we said, virology, high highs, low lows. This book I felt like was far more consistent all the way through, but that's almost like in comparison to virology, I was sort of like missing that sort of like, I don't know if bumpiness was the right word, but I was missing some sort of variation in my reading experience.
Yes. The thing that I will say, like, is that for every like truism that I could come up with, I could immediately look at this stack and identify its exception. Like that that it's like it is not actually as simple as like here's what a good format looks like. Also, I will say just like I like most of these books. We've picked a lot of like good ones. Like there's a couple that I'm like, that one.
But they've been fun. I mean, the girl in the show,
we had so much fun talking about. Like fuck that book, but it was great to discuss because it sucked so much. Reader Come Home was another one that we both got real riled up about. Even if the book I wasn't that sold on, or we had fun talking about it.
I forgot about that one.
You were like, I deleted that from my brain.
Well, like no, because the thing was that was a book that I was like, okay, I don't think that I agree entirely with the author, but I think one of the things we probably said was like, I think that they have like a strong point of view, and there's like something of substance to engage with that in a way that was like kind of still good. Like that was like a good part of that reading experience for me.
There were still like kernels of like useful stuff going on there. This weird book, man. The mushroom anthropology book. What a weird little gem this one was. I don't know, man. We got some good stuff here. A good stack of stuff. Well, anyway.
Finally, like make a list.
A weird detour.
Well, I mean, like so, like we were talking about like how like one of the things we like with that, like some of the essays are like when they become like meta essays, and I feel like we've reached the meta.
We've reached the meta essay portion of this live stream.
Maybe a little less elegantly.
Listen, well, we're not being paid to do this. We're a little.
To be fair, if I was being paid, I don't know that it would be any more elegant.
Well, I mean, well, maybe not. No, okay. No, you're right. Okay.
That's how you know I'll never sell out, because if they don't pay me.
Listen, this is what you get. I
don't even know what selling out would look like for our nonfiction book club.
Taking big money from, well, okay, actually I will say what not selling out looks like is that we did actually have to we changed what our next book was going to be because realized I picked a book, and then Deboki pointed out that it was a HarperCollins book, so we maybe at some point HarperCollins will get their shit together.
Be nice.
And
pay your people,
pay their staff, pay their employees, and we can read their book. But in the meantime, I put forth 2 other options, and I can feel myself going back and forth. I think
I'm going to let you surprise me. I'm going to let you pick it right now.
Okay. All right. Our next book is this one.
So to be clear, this was actually originally what we were going to do.
This is what we were going to do. And then before we hopped on the call, I said, what if we do this one instead? And Deboki said, yes, that's fine. But no, I want to do this one. So our next book for what is this? I actually can't. I think I maybe can't do I can't do the second Saturday. So I either have to do the week before or the week after.
We can figure that out. We'll send out a message.
Okay.
Like when I next week, we'll let you all know when it is.
Sometime in March.
Yeah.
Sometime in March, we will be discussing Bittersweet, How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole by Susan Cain. We're going to have a sad girl party.
I think we're due.
That was like my big hesitation is I was like, I don't know if I'm, or like, is that the thing that I want to do? Do I really want to take everybody? I mean,
if we read a few chapters and we realize we don't want to do the sad girl live stream, we can change we've done it before.
That's true.
That one book that we still
Irresistible Empire. Yes, our white whale. The white whale of Nonfiction Book Club. I mean, it's Whatever. It's fine. We've done it. We've picked this book. We'll let you know if we change our minds. But I don't know.
Yeah. I tried to I was asking a bookstore near me. There's a wine bookstore in Austin that's like really awesome. It's like, I guess, relatively new. They opened pretty recently. It's called Vintage, so I would recommend checking it out. I went there and I asked them if they had bittersweet, and they didn't. But also the person kept getting confused because she was thinking about sweet bitter, which I guess is like it came out I think last year. So yeah.
Messing
Anyways,
people up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, yep. We'll see you next month. Come cry with us.
It'll be fun.
It'll be so much fun. It'll be so much fun, I promise.
Yeah. Cool. Bye.